Like do 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go.
3, 2, it's preparing live screen.
Okay. Don't know if we're live just yet. Jayde, how are we looking?
3, 2, it's preparing live screen.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. So the question that we get asked a lot as agency owners, digital marketing agency owners in the real estate space is, are YouTube ads better than Facebook ads? It's a big question. There's quite a bit to it, and that's what we'll be talking about today to make sure that you understand what's best for you and your business. And basically to dive right into it, I'll introduce who we are, and then we'll get right to what's working now, why it's working, what's not working, what you should look out for, and what kind of benefits you can expect. So my name is Roy, and I have here Jayde Gorling with me as well. And we're part of the owner team for Black House Marketing. If you're hearing a lot of messages, we have a lot of activity going on in the background. Always a busy day here, a lot of activity, super excited to be here. So yeah, Jayde, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name's Jayde Gorling, like Roy said. We're known as Black House Marketing, but a lot of our ads advertise under From Cold to Sold. So that's probably how the majority of you will know us as. You'll probably see my face and Zach's face, who's not with me right now. And Roy is sort of our counterpart that is kind of behind the scenes that nobody really ever gets to see. So it's actually interesting that him and I are the face right now talking about this.
Yeah, and I'm trying to smile more than usual. So I'm doing my best here with the smiling. That's not a forte for me, but we'll see what we can do. My role in the company is more on the sales end, the fulfillment side. So a bit of both, and just basically making sure that everything is running smoothly. More so behind the scenes, Jayde is more the face of our company. And then when we bring all that together, it works out to be an awesome team, and it's a great experience to be working together. So we want to share that with you so you guys can take the lessons that we've learned very much so the hard way, so that you guys don't need to, in many cases, very hard way. And you don't need to be doing that. If you can learn from us, then why go down that road? So, stay tuned, especially towards the end of it where we bring it all together. And yeah, let's dive into it. So I think the first bit that we'll start off with is, when do you actually use Facebook? So I'll happy to give my opinion, but Jayde, do you want to jump in first?
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit about Facebook. And so I want to look at this, like, just full disclosure, from a very objective view. I'm not basically going to say to you guys, hey, this is what you need to do, and if you don't, here's what's going to happen. Because I truly believe there is a time and a place for both platforms. So the first one that we're going to touch on quite a bit is Facebook. So Facebook right now, it feels like they're getting a little bit of a bad rap because everyone's on Facebook, everyone's using Facebook, and it seems like everyone's like, you know what, I've tried Facebook, I didn't really like it. And as much as I want to say, like, oh, YouTube is the king of ads, I really want to preface this a little bit. There's a time and a place for Facebook. And one of the great times to be using Facebook is when you are a newer agent with less of a budget. And the main reason why I say that is because, and I don't want to go too much into YouTube yet, Facebook essentially is casting a very wide net for your audience. And so what I mean by that is, there's not really a lot of targeting. Essentially what you can do is you can put a picture in front of people, and if they look at that and they say, hey, you know what, I actually kind of am in the market to be purchasing a house. This ad is speaking to me. They're going to opt into that. Now, one of the drawbacks with that is not drawbacks, it's kind of a benefit and a drawback. You're really catching someone right at the very beginning of their client journey, okay? So what's happening at that beginning is they don't have a real estate agent yet. They probably don't have a pre-approval yet. They're just thinking about this at this point in time. Hey, I hate my landlord. Hey, I want to move out of my parents' basement. Hey, I want to divorce my wife. Whatever it is, they're at the very beginning of the scale. So one of the huge advantages of that is that your cost per lead is significantly lower when you consider that. And the second thing is they don't already have a realtor, which means you have a huge opportunity to be building a relationship with that person. Now, that doesn't mean that person's necessarily going to transact right away, That doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to have all their papers in hand ready to go, but that means you have a huge opportunity, especially if you're a newer real estate agent who you don't necessarily have the sales skills to get into some sort of high stakes, high pressure sales scenario where you're basically having to compare why you're going to be the better real estate agent versus someone who's a seasoned vet. That also means that your cost per lead is going to be quite a bit lower because you are getting people that are right at that beginning. Everyone wants to buy a home. The American dream is to buy a house for your family. Everyone wants that for themselves, or the majority of people anyways. So when you're catching somebody at that point in time, you're casting a very wide net over people. You're going to get more people that are at the beginning of their purchasing journey or client journey or whatever you want to call it. And that's a huge opportunity for someone who doesn't necessarily have a huge budget or the sales skills to compete, when all of a sudden it's like the pond gets smaller, the stakes get higher, and all of a sudden people are fishing in a bucket. So it's a little bit different. It's a slightly different mindset that you have to have when you are considering using Facebook. And it's also a different type of clientele that you're going after. Facebook historically is always going to be better for buyers, whereas YouTube, which we'll talk about in a minute, that can work for buyers, but that is predominantly going to be for sellers.
Yeah.
I touch on that, Roy. That's from my marketing perspective.
Yeah. So I want to break this up a little bit piece by piece. So one of the big ones is, who's this really for? And I think you touched on it and covered that pretty well, but just to really emphasize the actual point, for Facebook, it's an easier platform to get it up and running. It's faster. More people are kind of familiar with it. It's meant to be user friendly. Yeah, you can go quite deep with it. Once you get to once you're at a high ad spend and you really want to start, optimizing, split testing, all that fun stuff, which we do on, every day. But realistically though, if you're trying to do things by yourself, and this is something that's new for you and you want to keep things pretty simple, maybe just, you've seen somebody else do it, or you watch a YouTube video somewhere that explains how to do Facebook marketing, you'll have an easier time with Facebook just because it's something that's done on a very large scale. It's quicker to get up and running and you'll see results faster. So it's really for somebody that's starting out. If you're newer to the whole online marketing, paid advertising, pay per click, all that fun stuff, Facebook would definitely be something you'd want to consider. And you can also start off with a really small budget and see results. It is going to take some tweaking, and you're going to want to be careful not to overspend and go too crazy with the ad spend. But really, the thing that you're going to see working really well right now, even in this market that we have, which is boiling hot, and depending on where you are, it could be white hot. Which is the next level that I could think of beyond boiling, but it really is pretty crazy. You see homes, let's say it's $300,000 home, it's selling at $385 is unprecedented. I don't think that's happened since the 60s. So even in this kind of a market for buyers, YouTube, might not be the best fit, but Facebook will work for buyers right now, and is definitely something I would suggest taking a look at. With that, I do want to jump into budget as well. So, Jayde, as far as budget goes for Facebook, what would you typically say that you sort of see people do? Maybe that they typically do, but what would you actually recommend? What does Facebook suggest? What kind of insight could you shed on that?
So Facebook's never going to suggest a certain price point. They essentially want anyone and everyone to just put a budget in. But the algorithm works on a bid. So kind of the irony is that when you start working with a marketing agency, if your cost per lead is a little bit higher, there's a couple things that could be happening. A, it's that they don't have good enough data to actually be serving those ads to your audience, because we all know with the Fair Housing Act, you can't necessarily do specific targeting, but if you have other ways of doing that and you spent a lot of money on that data, that's really going to help you. So Facebook, at the end of the day, they're not going to tell you that secret. They just want you to spend money no matter what. If you do want to be spending money on Facebook, kind of the minimum threshold for the majority of areas, you want to be spending around $600 per month at the bare minimum. Anything less than that, and you're not really helping yourself, and you're not spending sort of the average in real estate. The average in real estate, people are spending a minimum of $600. So if you're spending less than that, you're not actually bidding appropriately because it's an auction system. If you think every other real estate agent is bidding on your exact audience and you're below that threshold, what do you think is going to happen? Now, if you're in a more competitive area, let's say the median house price range is quite high, commissions are quite higher, there's a lot of things that are going to be driving up that buyer demand, you're going to have to spend more money. So you're going to start to recognize that, oh, hey, this isn't really working. And it could be that it might have absolutely nothing to do with the ads. The ads might be proven ads that work everywhere else, but all of a sudden it's like, well, your cost per lead is up. Why is that? Again, it goes back to that auction system, which is always kind of funny because the expectations versus reality when you use a system that works basically all across the country, and all of a sudden it's like, well, how come this isn't working as well here? Again, it comes back to that auction system.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the budget goes, basically when we're talking to our clients, especially in the sales stage, what we'll tell them is the minimum is, like Jayde said, you'd want about $600. So that works out to $20 a day. If you're below that, it's, optimization, really seeing any kind of split testing and being able to figure out what's working, what's not. It's just going to take longer. So for you to be efficient with your time, because time is also money. Sometimes you forget that, it's like, I'm going to be cheap with this. This isn't one of those things where you want to be too far below 600. This isn't one of those things that you want to skimp on. You do want to figure out what's working, what's not, sooner rather than later. And 600 really is the minimum. If you talk to Facebook, they'll tell you, 1,000 would be the sweet spot. And for sellers, if you are going to try sellers on Facebook, which we don't necessarily recommend, especially now in the current environment, but if you did want to do sellers, which we've done a ton of, you'd want to be right around the 1,000 range, if not more. The more the merrier. It means you get more data. The more data you have, the more efficient you're going to be. And we're going to mention data a couple times here. And the way that kind of works is that if you have a ton of data to work from, then what that basically means is that you're able to have more precise targeting. If you have more precise targeting, that means you're hitting the right people that are actually going to have a better rate of conversion from lead to appointment, and then from appointment to an actual, if it's a seller, then a listing. If it's a buyer, then an actual buyer of that property, that house. And the thing that you kind of want to consider there is, $1,000, if it's a little rusty, but I think like if you take 1,000, you divide that by 30, what does that work out to? It's $33 a day, basically. So for buyers, you're looking at about 20, sellers like $30+ a day. That's right around where you want to be. And we are talking pretty much about minimums. 1,000 would be the sweet spot in my view. Like if I'm going to tell you what Facebook suggests, the magic number for the month would be 1,000.
Yeah.
And that would be for budget.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough. Those are minimums. If you all of a sudden are spending $1,000 and you're not seeing those conversions that you want to see, again, it is an auction, which means if you are in a very expensive area, you need to spend more money because the other guy across the street in that other nice little office, he's spending more than you. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the big issues with giving those generalizations of how much should you spend. That's where you're really going to run into those issues. If you start working with a marketing agency and you're trying to save money and they're like, well, you know what, we'll spend less money on ads. They're not actually doing you any favors because you're not actually going to be bidding properly. So those are super important things to just take note of. The other thing too, is if you are running ads yourself, say you've taken a couple online courses to figure this out. What a lot of people do is they'll start running ads and then they turn them off, and they'll start running ads and they turn them off. You're not building any data, and that's not helping you. That's not doing yourself any favors. You need to be building and buying that data. The more data that you buy, the more optimized your campaigns are going to be. So over time, where your campaign starts is not going to be where it is going to be 90 days from here, 6 months from here, a year from now. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, is that in this whole marketing world, it's such a quick fix. It's such a, how can I fix your business and make you millions tomorrow? And the problem with that is that you can't even plug into the algorithm fast enough and buy enough data quick enough for this to even remotely be a quick fix thing. And so everyone's like, oh, I tried this for 30 days and I'm not an instant millionaire. And one of the problems with that mindset is that you're not even buying enough data to actually have like an optimized campaign. So like having that mindset of I'm looking to fix my business today is not really doing you any favors. And if any marketing agency out there or whoever it is telling you that like this advertising thing is going to be the thing that fixes everything, it's not going to be 30 days. I promise you that. There
Yeah.
are those. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say timeline is definitely one of the topics that we're going to cover. I think we'll actually just talk about timeline in a second. But what I was just going to say is like, just to touch on your point earlier, the start stop point, I just want to underline that. If you're, a lot of people that we talk to, they're looking for instant gratification. And if you're talking to somebody that's going to tell you, you sign up for this and in a week you're going to start seeing leads and it's going to kick ass and it's going to solve all your problems overnight, run, because that is complete bullshit. It's going to take longer than that. That's just the nature of the platform. That's the nature of this. And you want to make sure you know what you're doing, provided that you do. You're looking at, it could be 2 weeks just to get the campaign more or less optimized for Facebook, specifically Facebook. And start, stop. I mean, if you think about it, like with a car, city mileage versus highway mileage, completely different numbers. Your highway mileage, I don't know exactly, like I'm not a car guy, but I think it's like 2 times better or something like that. Like if it's like that with cars, with Facebook, it's way more than that. If you're going to do start stopping, the platforms hate that. They'll punish you for that. So if you're looking for that quick fix, pick up the phone and start cold calling, because it's not going to be Facebook or YouTube. If you want something that's, you can really turn up and scale and make this into a long-term thing, maybe bring on other agents, all that stuff. That's what online marketing is able to do for you and your business. It's able to multiply what you as one person is able to do. And that's what the draw is. But at the same time, one of the things that we're trying to do here as well is to address what the reality really is. From the side of us as agency owners, and more on the sales side and what I see happen before and after sales, and from Jayde's side, from the marketing perspective on actually what goes into it from our end and what works and what doesn't. She's been doing this for ages as well. So, you definitely want to take this into account. So whether you guys are going to try to do this yourselves or you want to hire a marketing company, you want to make sure that you're keeping these things in mind when you're looking at how you're going to do this, or how they're going to do it, and be looking out for those key points as to be able to understand if this is actually going to be a fit, or if what they're telling you, if it's a marketing agency, is actually going to be accurate, or if they sound like they know what they're talking about. So hopefully out of us talking here, you guys are going to be able to discern that, and you're not going to fall into, one of those sections or one of those points where you feel like you're getting, you're spinning your wheels. We don't want that. Basically that's the idea here. So we'll go to timeline. What does it typically look like to actually start seeing results? We kind of touched on this earlier, but just to wrap that one up, just to make sure that we're clear on that, you want to basically give it about 2 weeks. If it's a marketing agency and they know what they're doing, like what we typically do, you're basically looking at about 2 weeks. It's hard for us to give you an exact timeline because a lot of that depends on you and who's actually running the campaigns. We can tell you from our experience, when we do it, it's going to take us about 2 weeks. If it's any other marketing agency, it depends on how they're doing things. It depends on how good they are, if they know what they're actually doing. But those would be some of the things that you want to look out for. It is not overnight. Yeah, you can get your campaign up and running pretty quick, but if you see things like tank in the first day, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could mean that you just need to give it a couple more days. Jayde, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, like I think Facebook does have a pretty quick turnaround time in terms of like you can get the ads up and running. You might see leads pretty quick, like within that whole 2-week time frame. Once you start seeing action and you're able to get appointments and everything like that, that's usually around a 2-week time frame. Typically what you'll want to do is split test multiple angles. And that's usually where you're going to start to find those sweet spots, right? Facebook honestly is pretty quick in terms of like actually seeing results on a computer. And so that's one thing that you want to be a little bit cognizant of. Just because you're seeing results on a computer or on your screen doesn't necessarily mean those results are actually going to be the catalyst to the end result you're actually looking for, because the end result isn't a lead. The end result for you as a real estate agent is to get a sale. So those are things that you want to keep in mind. There's timeline to success of the campaign, and then there's timeline to success of the sale. And that's one thing to recognize. Facebook is faster than YouTube to get things up and running, but it's slower in terms of timeline to actually sell to that prospect. And again, that really just goes back to that whole client journey.
Right. And I think what we should also touch on is the quality component. You know, how good is the quality of what you get out of Facebook? Now, I mean, my input with that, just before Jayde, I think you can touch on that a bit more, is that really a lot of it has to do with, yeah, it does matter what the campaign is going to look like. You know, the front end of it. You know, what the prospects are going to see in terms of what you're actually showing them in their feed. So what it actually says, the copy, the images that you're using, is it a carousel, is it a video, things like that. What's the title of it? What's like the first sentence that's going to be the hook to bring them in? That matters, but you don't want to forget what actually happens once they click. How important that is cannot be understated. And you know, things to look out for is most people and most companies, they're going to go for lead forms. That's kind of an obsolete way to do things. Just go to lead forms that auto-populate. There's a ton of problems with that. And you're basically just, your efficiency is going to go down the tubes really quick if you're going to go about doing it that way. And there's better ways to do it, which is what we practice. But the quality component is really one of the big differences that you're going to see between Facebook and YouTube. And that's really where there's like a night and day difference, especially for sellers, which is why we don't use, in our agency, we don't use Facebook anymore. We have in the past extensively, but we don't use Facebook anymore for sellers. For buyers, it still looks great, but it's still super, super important regardless of which platform. What's really, really important is what happens after they click on your ad. Where does that take them? And then once they've filled out whatever it is that they're filling out in whatever way they're filling it out, what happens after that? And then how do they end up talking to you? So that whole process is probably, at least, I would say that's actually more important than what attracts them in the first place. Like, you can have a great ad, but if everything after that ad and they click that ad isn't done correctly, it's kind of pointless. That would be my view on it as well. So.
Yeah. And I think that's important to note too, because there's the ad, but then there's what happens after. And to sort of touch on Roy's point with that is, again, he talked about lead forms, and that's just auto-populated information. Facebook, you're casting that wide net, which is what I kind of talked about. So what are you doing to make that net smaller and smaller and smaller? Because as you make that net smaller and smaller and smaller, that's where your quality starts to come in. You're casting a net over everyone, you're going to get a sample of everyone. So how do you start to differentiate between everyone up here and where you actually want to get your massaged, qualified people from? That's all going to depend on what basically happens from the time that somebody comes in from the lead and to the time that you actually get that person as an appointment. Those are important things to know, because there's ways to advertise that are going to just keep your net wide the entire time and nothing ever changes. And there's other strategies that are going to help turn out some of those people who, you know, they're looky-loos or foundation kickers or whatever the term that you want to use is. There's certain things that you can do to try and get that smaller and smaller and smaller so that you can actually get that manicured, qualified lead. And you're not, I don't want to say wasting your time, but you're not spending a whole bunch of time with people who are still up here. So yeah, the ad, not so important. What happens in between that time frame, that's where stuff starts to get important. And if you're using an agency, those are things that you want to be paying attention to. How are they surveying these people? Is it just an auto-populated lead form? Or are they taking them off to a landing page that's scrubbing some of that information to figure out, like, where are you actually at with this? What's happening after that? Are they just sending you that lead, or do they have somebody that's actually calling all of those people for you? Are these leads just getting thrown into a database and then the expectation is that you call all of them? Those are things that you need to think about. At the end of the day, you want people that have went through questionnaires, that have talked to somebody, who have went through a fairly intensive process to basically prove, like, yes, this person does have high intent and here's what their situation looks like. So those are things that you want to be paying attention to, not just, here's the name of a person who thought that a picture on the internet was attractive.
Yeah. I mean, as an agency that does millions and you literally spent millions of dollars in ad spend, you really start to see some commonalities and some trends. And one of the things that you kind of want to, one of the conversations that we'll see that I personally had many, many times, I'm sure Jayde, you've had this conversation many times, and I know our sales team has these conversations on a daily basis, is, one of the things is you need to be able to put the numbers together. How much does a lead cost? How many of those leads are going to convert to appointments? What do those ratios look like? How many of those am I going to convert to deals? Because that ultimately tells you what the math is to your business. That's the key to it, really. And one of the things that you want to be weary of is if you're talking to somebody, or even if you see results and you look, it's like, oh, my lead cost is only 20 cents or it's $1. Who cares? That's not the point. It doesn't matter what your lead cost is if none of them are converting and it's all garbage. It makes no difference what your lead cost is. If all of it's garbage and you can't use any of it, what difference does it make how much you're paying for your leads? The cost of the lead, yes, it's important, but it's what the actual, these are people. Leads are people. It's not just data. Data is people and you being able to figure out what trends those people are showing you, and that becomes your data. But you never want to forget that, if you're bringing in people and it's costing you nothing, well, maybe you can say like, hey, you get a free Lamborghini if you click this link and look at my real estate stuff here. Well, you'll get clicks, and then everyone's going to opt out immediately after, and those clicks might be really cheap, but what have you accomplished? The only thing you've accomplished is you've gotten low lead costs, and you've everything else is just horrible. So the lead cost isn't the only thing that you want to bear in mind. It's what's your actual acquisition costs. And that's more complicated, because the components to the acquisition cost and being able to establish, how much does it actually cost me in using paid advertising to get my deal? And for that, you need to know your lead cost, yes, but you also need to know how many of those leads are converting to appointments. That's also really important. And that's where everything after them clicking on the ad comes in. And then how many of those appointments are you able to convert? And that's where you come in and your abilities come in. And that's not something that any marketing agency can control. That's not any course that can control. That's you. And yeah, you can learn that stuff and it comes from practice, but ultimately no marketing agency is going to do that for you. And that's something that you're going to need to be good at. Provided that that's good and all of that lines up, that's the number that's really ultimately the number you want to be looking at. And it does take numbers to get to that, but what is your acquisition cost and your acquisition rate, or how many leads does it take you to actually get a conversion? How many appointments does it take you to get a conversion, right? So those would be some of the points that you kind of want to think about. And that goes for both platforms, whether it's Facebook ads or YouTube ads, regardless. Anything you wanted to add to that? The next thing that I wanted to cover was just general pros and cons for Facebook before we move over to YouTube. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Jayde?
No, let's hop into it, because I think those 2 points that you brought up, that the marketing company can't control your actual cost per client acquisition, and lead cost doesn't matter so much if your cost per client acquisition is through the roof. Lead cost doesn't matter. And I think that's one thing that a lot of new agencies brag about. Back in like 2017, that was such a big deal to get lower lead costs. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, you're getting these penny leads, but what are you doing with them? And do you have systems to even process, say, 500 leads per month as a single agent? So those are just things to highlight and really consider when you are having those conversations.
Absolutely. So bottom line for Facebook, before we move on to YouTube now, which, we love YouTube. Facebook's also awesome. Both have been really good to us and both have been really good to our clients. So we love both, but pros and cons for Facebook. I'll tell you what mine are. Maybe Jayde, do you want to do pros? I'll do cons. Maybe we do it that way.
Sure. What do you want to do first? Should we do one after the other? How do you want to do it?
Yeah. Let's do one and one.
Okay.
We'll do like five pros, 5 cons or something like that, or however, see if I have 5, but yeah.
Okay. So I'll name first pro, fairly quick. The results start to happen pretty quick. It's not really a long wait period. You don't have to wonder, oh, did this agency take my money? You're going to start to see results within a couple weeks.
Yeah. The downside, the flip side to that is that Facebook is really just meant more so nowadays for buyers. If you're going to try sellers on it, it's going to be super competitive. You're probably not going to be super satisfied with the results unless you're in a market that's less competitive. Then it might work out still. But otherwise, everybody and their brother's trying to get sellers right now. Buyers, it still works really well. But that's if you're looking for buyers, then that's a pro. But if you're looking for sellers, it's a bit, it's definitely a little bit of a downside. So you want to be really aware of that as to what's working right now with Facebook.
Next one, lead cost. You can get leads for incredibly cheap on Facebook.
Yeah. The flip side to that is while you can get them really cheap, the quality is oftentimes going to be an issue, especially if the back end isn't set up correctly.
Not to say that you can't get good leads on Facebook. You absolutely can. It just means that it's going to take more leads to get to those real golden eggs.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I mean, that isn't to say for buyers you can get excellent results, but you basically want to make sure that you know what you're doing on the back end. I cannot emphasize that enough. I'm going to repeat that endlessly because it's super, super important. But as far as quantity, yeah, out of that quantity that you get off of Facebook, you're going to have conversions as well.
So my next one would be, it's good for a newer agent because you don't have to compete so much for that person's business. Simply because you are getting them early in the game, you don't need to be as sly of a salesperson to try and get somebody into your network. You can basically get them right at that beginning point when they're kind of just considering it, and you can start to build that relationship with that person.
Right. Let's see. As far as another downside that I can think of for Facebook, I think the downside is kind of like a plus that can also be seen as a downside because it's relatively easy just to go launch a campaign. The downside is you have a lot of competition in certain markets because there's a lot of people on Facebook that are doing all this whole real estate thing, a lot of realtors, a lot of wholesalers, a lot of investors. So it can get pretty expensive if you're in a very expensive market. Your cost per lead you can see that go really high when you get into those bidding wars that Jayde mentioned earlier. So you really need to watch your budget. And sometimes that'll mean that you're going to end up playing around with your campaigns until you figure out a way to keep the budget low. And if you can't keep the budget low, well, then you're going to have to think up another way or another platform to still get the results you're looking for. So bottom line, if you're in a competitive market, chances are a lot of your competitors are already using Facebook, and you need to be aware that your per lead cost might be substantially higher than it would be in other markets. So something to think about there is there's a lot of competitors using Facebook nowadays.
For sure. I'd say those are probably my top pros. And I think I want to add to your con list. That kind of has to do with the whole timeline thing. The timeline, you're getting people that are early on in the buying stage. That means you're going to have less people that have a pre-approval letter in hand that are actively searching for a real estate agent. You're getting people very early on, which is great. But at the same time, if you're looking to start to make some of that ROI back right away, that's where you're going to be a little bit more limited, just because you are getting people that, they might be 6 months out before they're going to have that ability. You're going to have to utilize your network and get them in touch with a lender, get them in touch with whoever they really need to be in touch with, or who you can help them with to get them through that buyer journey. And I think that's something that's often overlooked with online ads, is that people have that expectation that every single lead should come with that letter in hand. That is not the purpose of advertising. You will get people like that, but the purpose is really to be building your pipeline so that it's in the long term. You're going to have some people that are going to be ready to transact pretty quick, some people a couple months down the road, and some people around 6 months. If you build your pipeline up long enough, that means that you're constantly going to be churning that business out. So that's kind of one of the cons to Facebook as well. While you can build those relationships with those people, that can take a little bit more time.
So Jayde, when do I use YouTube?
YouTube. I'm excited to talk about YouTube. I feel like this whole time we're talking about Facebook, and I am ready. YouTube, I would say that the number one time to be using YouTube in your career is if you are a more experienced, either agent or team leader, someone who's ready to basically take on leads that are ready to transact, and you're willing to fight for that business, meaning you're going to have to be a good salesperson because it is quite a bit more competitive at that level, because you are no longer going after people who are just early on in their process. The people that you're getting on YouTube are the people that are, I need a real estate agent, show me the top ones.
Right. It's, I gotta say, I am a huge fan of YouTube. Our company's growth has just, the numbers are just amazingly good. We're one of the big movers in this industry for YouTube marketing. I mean, we're first mover in that, and we're doing really well. A big reason that our company has exploded in size and sales is because of YouTube. I almost feel like we should have talked about YouTube before Facebook. Huh? Yeah, keep it.
Keeping the dogs out.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a really well kept secret, and I'm surprised that more people don't sort of know about it. But YouTube is a hard nut to crack, and I think that's why it's been a secret. It's that hidden weapon that if you understand it, or if you have a way to use it correctly, if you don't use it correctly, you're going to burn a lot of money really fast. But if you do know how to use it right, the way we do it, the results are just night and day difference. Everybody's super happy. It's super precise. I can go on and on. I mean, it's just, it's an amazingly good platform, and the quality that you get off of it, I don't think there's anything that you can really match that with. Closest thing I could think of, I mean, it's on the level of like a good referral that comes in. It's kind of like that. It's on that level. It's just really, really solid a lot of the time, especially the way we do it on the back end as well, where we also have 3 layers of qualifying and so on and so forth. But when
maybe I should explain why right there, because I feel like it's like, I feel like I should explain why, just because people might be wondering, oh, it's better. What? Great to say, but let's explain why for a second here. And I wrote a blog about this that you can check out on our website. The reason why is because YouTube is owned by Google. And so what that means is that someone who's frantically searching, I need a real estate agent to list my house. It might not be that. It can be something that's related to like, I'm listing my house now. YouTube gets to use that data. And so it's a lot more challenging to get on the front page of Google. So when someone's searching best realtor in whatever, or who should I list my house with, they're basically search terms that are basically indicating this person is ready to list their house yesterday. It's very expensive to be that very first article that comes up, because you're going to be competing with, Zillow, you're going to be competing with the MLS, you're going to be competing with so many things that are going to be coming up, realtor.com. All of these things, you as a team or a brokerage, you don't have multi-millions of dollars to get on that front page. But what you can do is you can advertise on YouTube, which essentially takes that same data of that person who's searching for that criteria. They're looking for something, they go to someone else's page, and all of a sudden a YouTube ad pops up in the corner, and it's for you. And so that is the benefit right there, is that you can go after that audience who's frantically searching without having to have the budget to compete with multinational companies. So sorry, I get excited.
Yeah, I get excited just listening and talking about YouTube, because it is freaking awesome. It's we love YouTube, but I shouldn't be saying that, because it's supposed to be more like Facebook or YouTube. So
we're supposed to be objective about that.
Yeah, no, but realistically though, what one of the things you really want to bear in mind is who's YouTube actually for, who's it not for as well, and that's a really key point here when you're considering which platform to use. As far as clients that do really well with YouTube and who we suggest YouTube to, it's a little bit different, because we actually run the campaigns, we hire actors, we have scripts, we do all the designs of the campaigns, running them, the audiences targeting, we have appointment setters on the back end, we have in-house campaign managers, appointment setters are all in-house, we have systems on the back end, automations. I could go on.
Wow, thanks for bragging.
Yeah, we have the whole system built out. But what I'm saying, the reason I'm telling you all that is that's how we have it set up. And for the way we have it set up for our clients, that'll typically, that's like the big leagues, if you will. And it really only makes sense for you to be at that level where you're already doing well and you want to do better. You want to kick the ass of your competitors. You're tired of being on the same ball field as them. You want to go to another level. All you guys are on Facebook. You guys are all competing against each other. Well, hold on a second. Nobody's on YouTube though. But how do I go about doing that? Well, the thing is, it's pretty risky in most respects for you to go and start paid advertising on YouTube and for it to be effective to get to that stage as a single person. Yeah, you can definitely try it, and I can give you some, we can give you some tips to try to do that. But really, you need to know what you're doing there. YouTube is a slower beast. It's more like a diesel engine. It can take 4 weeks to get the campaign optimized. Initially, your per lead costs, and this is what we tell our clients. If you see your per lead cost, per lead, not appointment, lead, you could easily be at 100, 200. Hell, I think we've even seen $300 or $400 per lead in the first, couple weeks. That's normal. So you're spending a lot of money and you're not seeing a lot of results come out of it in the first month, sometimes even the first 2 months. Just not much is happening. It's just you're spending money on ad spend. But that's how the platform works, because you're literally going through all the data that Google has for those people that you're targeting. Google is a big deal. I mean, you're talking about all the search history that they have. You're talking about people and all the videos that they watch. YouTube is, I think, like one of the biggest websites on the internet nowadays. It's massive.
Search engine.
Yeah. It's a huge deal. So to go through all of that, it takes time. But once you finally get over that hump, that's when, like a diesel engine, like I said, I'm not a car guy, I'm not an engine guy, but it's a really good example. It's once it starts going, it's just super efficient and it just keeps going and going and going. So for much less, fuel, you're going far further. It's just super efficient. You're just getting consistent results, good quality, all of that. But the level where that really makes sense is if you're able to absorb 2 months of not amazing results and optimization. If you can take that kind of a timeline, which is really, that's really the downside to YouTube. If you kind of want to break it down, like the big one is it just takes long. It takes a long time and you need a little bit more money. So who is that going to be a fit for? It's going to be somebody that understands that it takes money to make money. A business mentality is definitely going to be useful here, where you're looking at this as a long-term investment. It's not short-term. You want short-term. Facebook's much better for that. So for YouTube, if you're already closing, let's say 12 deals a year at least, if you're a single agent, or you're a brokerage owner, or you're a team, maybe you're already doing paid advertising. Maybe you're already doing paid advertising that's working pretty well for you, but you're noticing that, especially now in this market, your sellers are really hard to come by. You've exhausted your sphere of influence. Referrals, it's great, but you realize you can't scale that. If those are some of the thoughts that you're having right now, then YouTube might just be the solution you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the who, and then the budget. But the budget, you basically want the minimum that you want to be looking at. And Jayde, if you want to jump in on this, the minimum that you want to be looking at is $1,000 per month for YouTube. That's the bare bones minimum. And I want to emphasize the minimum part of minimum. It is the minimum. You don't want to be going under that.
No, you're not even going to be able to compete on bids, because again, you're competing with the Google network. You're competing with people who are heavy hitters. You're competing with the best realtors in your city. And that's the biggest difference, is that on Facebook, everyone's on Facebook. On YouTube, you're using the Google platform. Who's using the Google platform? People who can afford to use the Google platform. Who can afford to use the Google platform? The top producing agents in your city. It's not the little guys. You're no longer the big fish in the little pond. You're the big fish in the big pond. And that's really where you want to be. But that's also where the competitiveness comes behind it. You're competing with other people who are the top rated agents in your city. So you better have your sales skills sharpened and ready to go. This isn't going to be like Facebook where you're going to get lucky and some people are just going to like you. We're talking about listing people's houses. You will know that listing people's houses, it's not fun like it is buyers. It's give me the numbers, tell me how and why you're going to sell my house, for how much, and they want those hard facts. It's not fun like it is with buyers. You need to be a salesperson if you want to be getting those listings and if you want to be competing with those top dogs. And I cannot stress that enough. So yes, YouTube is going to be that thing that is going to put you into that category if you're not already there. It's going to get you into that category, but you're going to have to fight for that business, which means if you're not the sharpest salesperson, if you don't have systems in place for sales, those are things that I highly, highly, highly encourage going and taking that extra step to who can I get for a coach that's going to help me with some of this stuff? How can I get some of these systems implemented into my business? You're going to need to take a lot of accountability to take your entire business. See, the dog gets excited about this to that next level. So those are really important things to think about. If you all of a sudden want to step into the ring and you're getting these leads and appointments of people that are like, yeah, come look at my house. You better not show up at that house empty-handed. You better show up with such a good listing presentation that you're not going to be squandering your budget.
It's the way I would kind of look at YouTube is there's very, very few agents that use YouTube. Agents, brokerage owners, teams, there's really not that many. There's even fewer that do a good job with it. There's very few that do a good job with it and actually get positive return on investment, because some of the points that Jayde mentioned, like maybe you're just not that great at listings. It's costing you money to generate those leads and then you're not converting them. That's not even anything to do with the marketing. It's just, you're not converting them. It's not, maybe that's not your forte. It could be you, but there's not that many agents. There's not that many that do well with it. There's even fewer that do well with it. There's even fewer still in terms of marketing agencies that even offer YouTube for real estate agents. And there's barely any. In fact, I can't think of any other companies or names of companies that do a really really amazing job with YouTube for realtors. It pretty much doesn't exist. Because like I said, it is a tough nut to crack. You have to understand the expectations. And if you're the right fit, you're the right fit. If you're not, then the best thing really is just for you to use something like Facebook. You got your mailers, you got your cold calling. Maybe it's premature, it's not the right thing for you to do YouTube, but you just want to understand what you're getting into. And if it's the right fit, it'll be the best thing you've ever done for your business. But if it's the wrong fit, then you should be able to know that well before you actually end up getting into it. And that's, for us on our sales side, we're pretty specific about who we'll take on board for YouTube. And if we hear certain things like you're a new agent, you don't have a lot of experience, because of what we know happens, we'll just tell you, yeah, look, here's what we would suggest. You might want to try mailers, hire a VA, do some cold calling. You don't need to be doing YouTube. It's going to be too risky for you and your business. So we'll tell you that straight up. We have tons of new clients, tons of new businesses coming on board, tons of clients that have been with us for ages. And we're super happy. They're super happy. Everything's going great. And that's what we want for everybody that we talk to. The only way that's going to happen is if we have an honest discussion about it. And that's one of the reasons we're doing these kinds of videos, so that you and anybody else that's considering these platforms know what you're actually getting into. Because at the end of the day, we all have families. We all have to pay bills. We all have to be able to put food on the table. And we're all people. So we just want things to go smoothly for you, because we know what a hard time looks like. We've all been through it. It's not fun. So if this video helps you avoid that and does the opposite, where things go smoothly for you, then that's awesome. And that's really all we're aiming for here. We're not necessarily, if you want to become a client and talk to us, great. But really, if we just save your ass from future mistakes, that's awesome. That would be just great if we can do that, because we see so many people get burned with this. And then we end up talking to them. It's like, I'm really, really skeptical about anything you say because I've been burned before. And that's a common conversation. So if we can avoid you getting burned, regardless of who you end up working with, that would be awesome.
Exactly. And I think a lot of that comes from, so many people think they've been burned because their expectation of the service and what actually happened with the service, there was a huge gap between those. And a lot of times it's, people are trying to get a sale. A salesperson's job is to get a sale. For us, we're not really at that point where it's like, oh, we're desperate for our next sale. We need this to survive off of. I can't even tell you how many calls we book in a day. So like, we want to make sure that like when we're bringing someone on, it's a good fit, because we don't want to be the company that burned you, because it's just not fun. We didn't grow our business based on burning people. I don't want to get into that business. So I think that's really important to note, is like, we're going to have that conversation with you. We're going to tell you, like, YouTube is not to take a bad business and make them okay. It's not to take a bad business and make them great. It's not to touch anyone that's already has a bad business. It's to take someone who's already winning and push them further. And that's a really important point to note, is that because it costs more money, because it is something that is a little bit more advanced, it's not designed for someone who's brand new and doesn't know what they're doing. And I think that's a really good point to drive home, is it's going to take someone from good to great. It's not going to fix existing problems in your business.
For YouTube, generally for us as a marketing company, we work with people that are already winning and we help them win more, and usually a lot more. That's what we're in the business of doing. If you're just starting out, working with a marketing company, maybe it's a bit early for you. Maybe, once you're being consistent and you're already getting results, then you should consider, okay, how do I now go about, from me doing everything, how do I go about scaling my time, leveraging my time? Because I'm only one person, I'm only ever going to be one person. How do I do more with my day? Because I only have 24 hours in each of my days. We all do. So how do I take this to the next level, or many levels up higher than I'm at right now? And that's where marketing companies come into play. Coming back to YouTube, we talked about budget a little bit, timeline. It's going to take about 4 weeks for you to see the campaign start to really run. And then end of month one would be usually a little bit quick. It's more like usually in month two or towards the end of month two. That's when things are really optimized. Your lead cost will usually have dropped drastically. Your per lead cost, it depends, but it really depends on your market, but it's going to range. It's usually going to be maybe like, it can range anywhere from between.
It ranges quite a bit depending on the area. That's why I hate giving averages on this, because it's.
Yeah, I don't want to go into numbers, but it really just depends. Like it ranges very drastically. So that's a good point. But the timeline element, you just want to understand, bottom line, it's going to take longer. And if you're not prepared to be able to absorb that amount of time, or you haven't planned for 2 months of not really getting any major results, then it might not be the right time, or it might not be a fit in general to be using YouTube as a platform.
Well, one thing sorry, maybe you're about to say this, but I just want to interrupt. But when the campaign starts working, this is the biggest differentiator, is that when it starts working, not that it's not working that whole time, but it's buying data. That's what it has to do. You're basically feeding the beast. When you start to get those leads and those appointments, you're going to notice a tremendous difference, because instead of going after the people that are right here, you're going after the people right here. So you no longer so yes, it takes longer to optimize the campaigns to get to a point where your lead cost is substantially lower than it was at the beginning. But guess what? You don't have to deal with anyone up here. You're dealing with everyone who's, I'm looking to sell my house right now. The nurture process all of a sudden changes from like, you're nurturing them, building a relationship, all of those things, to like, okay, what are we going to do to get this house listed? It changes so much, which is funny, because it's like timeline on Facebook, you're going to start to see those results on the computer right away, but it's going to take a longer time to nurture those people, which is okay. Now on YouTube, it's going to take a longer time frame to actually get your campaign running smoothly in a way that you want. But when it does, all of a sudden you're going to start to see like, these people are ready to transact. I can get that listing. Again, unless you're in a market like what it is on this exact day today, where houses are just coming off of the market, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get paid instantly. So you always need to brace yourself for, okay, I'm investing for my future. I'm not investing for right now. If you have I'm investing for right now mentality, there are casinos everywhere. Go to them, take your money to them. Don't invest in advertising. Advertising is like, you need to be thinking and planning for a year out from now. A year out, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. This is the way that you need to be thinking. You can't have that quick fix mentality. That's why most people fail with diets. 80% of people fail with diets. Why? Quick fix mentality. Same thing with advertising. It's no different. It's just a different concept. You need to get your head in the game on what this is going to do. And chances are, if you're somebody who's ready for YouTube, you're already thinking long term. You're someone who's already good at what you do. You just want to be the best.
Yeah. I can tell you that like, you know, a conversation, there's like two types of conversations where it's like a night and day difference in terms of mentality. Like an example of a conversation that you might have with somebody that's not ready for YouTube is like, well, how do I know that you guys are going to deliver results? What kind of guarantees do you have? You know, well, I've tried so many different companies before, you know, I don't know much about YouTube, but you know, like I need to go and talk to, do you have any clients that I could talk to? If you hear any of those items, that usually means that this is somebody that, firstly, they're not actually looking to make a decision. They're just trying to find a reason to say no. And it's usually going to be the case that they're not going to sign up for marketing services anyway. And they're probably not even going to try it themselves. Even though they know that none of their competitors are doing YouTube, they don't know where to begin with it. So they're just not going to end up doing YouTube, and they're going to basically stay where they're at. The flip side of that is, you know, you talk to, let's say, a brokerage owner that's already spending, you know, thousands of dollars per month. You know, we have some very big brokerages that are spending 5 and even 6 digits in ad spend per month with us. And the initial conversation with that is just completely different. It's here's what we do, here's how it works, here's everything that's involved, here's all the different stages of qualification, appointment setters, everything that's included. Okay, sounds good. Can I do 6 months? Or, you know, how would it work if I do 12 or 6? What's the pricing? Okay, great. Yeah, let's do it. That's it. That's the conversation, because they get it. They understand it. They understand what's involved. You lay everything out. It's a completely different mindset. So if your mindset is more like you're just looking for reasons why something's probably not going to work for you, you're already going into it with the wrong mindset. And you'd be better off trying to basically try things out, figure it out for yourself, see what doesn't work so you know what you want, what you don't want, and then come back and revisit the platform, the idea of working with a marketing company, all those different things. But, you know, because we do such a large amount of volume and we have so many requests for service every day, you just see trends on who's going to be a good client for themselves to be able to see results, and who's probably firstly not going to convert for us as a business, and also for themselves, which is more important, that they're just not going to end up being successful. And that's a bigger deal for us. If we think that you're probably not going to be successful using marketing services, either ones that we offer or in general, then we'll tell you that straight up. And that's super important, is like how you see things and what your perception of your own abilities is, of the abilities of maybe the platforms that you're working with, or the companies that are going to use those platforms on your behalf to generate you business. And that really sort of, let's use that as sort of a segue to get into the quality component, and then just sort of get to wrapping up, because we've already been doing this for a while. I'm sure whoever's watching it at this point, you probably already know which one's for you, but quality for sellers, I don't think there's another platform that's nearly, you know, aside from sending out mailers or you know, doing something that's going to be very high costs. And even mailers, you have tons of competition now. I mean, there's just really nothing that comes close to YouTube right now. So in terms of quality, specifically for sellers, buyers, I think you'd be better off with Facebook, as I said earlier. But the quality that you get, because you're basically getting people that are watching ads for at least 30 seconds or more, clicking in to your landing pages and so forth. The intent is higher, because who watches ads for 30 seconds, right? Who's going to watch an ad for that long unless they're interested? So already the intent is higher. You have the fact that the amount of data that's available at your disposal is much more than it would be on other platforms. So tons and tons of benefits, and that's really going to affect your quality.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's night and day when it comes to sellers.
Yeah. So I think we'll just get to pros and cons, and then just basically give you guys a summary of what we think. And if you guys were cheeky about this and you jumped right to the end of it, give us another couple minutes and we'll get to the summary, so you don't have to watch the whole hour and something video. So fine. Yeah, good for you that you just skipped everything. But anyway, the bottom line, pros and cons for YouTube.
Are
Jay,
there
do you want to do?
Sorry.
You
I
want
don't
to do
want to
cons?
put my
I'll do
bias.
pros.
Okay.
What's that?
I said, are there cons? I don't want to put my bias into this, but there are. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go with a pro. Quality, you're
No,
using
wait. I want to do pros. You do cons. Cons are harder to come up with, so I'll do pros for a second.
fine.
Pros, it's great for sellers, and it's really good for sellers in terms of all the different aspects, in terms of what you can actually end up seeing. The quality just is hard to surpass in terms of sellers, especially.
Cons, it's not the greatest for buyers because people who have that high search intent, people who are actively looking for a real estate agent, as a buyer, and they already have that pre-approval letter in hand, chances are, I shouldn't say people who are searching, people who are already at that point where they're ready to transact right away. A lot of those people already have a real estate agent. So that's one of the cons, is that it's not very often that you're going to get someone that's going to be searching on Google, I would like to buy a house, please find me a realtor. Chances are someone within their sphere of influence, or they've opted into an ad a long time ago. If they're already at that point, chances are they have a realtor that they're going to be doing business with if they haven't already started signing paperwork with them.
Yeah. Another pro that I can think of is that you have a more memorable impression because it is actually video. So the actual format that you're using in terms of the way that you're communicating with your clients, it's more visual, it's audio visual as well. And that leaves a more lasting impression. It cuts a bit deeper. So that's part of the reason that you have higher conversion rate and also higher quality, because that's basically like the face of your company talking directly to your prospects. And you just can't do that with images and copy alone. So this is bringing words into a visual way, just like why movies are more of an experience than maybe reading a book. The books are great and they have their time and place, but movies they can really draw you in. And that's kind of what this is. If it's speaking to the right prospect, it'll really bring them in.
Con is, if you're a nervous person and you're nervous with spending money on ads, YouTube is going to be a little bit scarier just because it does take a longer time for you to start seeing the results. And I don't mean the sales, the results on a screen. So you're not going to see as much churning happening right away. So that makes people nervous.
Yeah. And another pro is that once it is up and running, and it does take a while to get it up and running, maybe that's the con that Jayde's about to tell you, but the thing is, once it is running, it's basically just, it just keeps going and going and going. It's going to be consistent, provided that you're managing it correctly. I can't understate that enough. You do need to still manage your campaigns. You have to cycle them. There's things like ad fatigue to bear in mind, things that are performing under, you have to manage it. But once you have initial data and you have all of that and it's running correctly and it's all set up correctly, it's a beautiful machine to have running for your business as a major asset and great return on investment, provided that it's set up correctly.
Con, with that good quality comes a increased cost. So you do need to have a bigger budget along with patience.
Yeah. One of the biggest pros that I can think of is that there's very few people that are using YouTube right now. So you have a major advantage against your competitors in that you're using a platform that pretty much if they are using it, they're probably not doing the best job that they could be. And if you can come along, use the platform, you have very few sharks in that area that are eating any fish. There's tons of fish to go for. And if you're familiar with red ocean, blue ocean, it's very much a blue ocean right now. It's the new frontier for marketing. And if you're not taking advantage of it, you're doing a bit of a disservice to yourself. So it's a great time if you're the right candidate for the platform.
I don't have any more cons. There's really no
Yeah.
more.
So I guess we'll wrap up here. We've been going at this for more than an hour. So I kind of thought, I don't know why I thought this would take like 40 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. No way, right?
Even the dogs are starting to say, what's going on? Why are you still talking? So I guess to summarize, Facebook, best for buyers or for people who are going after buyers, for newer agents who don't have as much budget, aren't as business savvy and are kind of looking for that, I need to see the results on a screen faster. YouTube, on the other hand, for more of a business savvy user, someone who has a little bit more experience, someone who has a larger budget, and someone who is going to be able to convert those high intent leads. Would you have anything else to add, Roy?
I do. And just before I do give that, I did want to mention one thing. If you guys found this useful, if you found this to be helpful to you, or if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, then make sure that you leave a comment below. If you're seeing this on Facebook, leave a comment below. We do read and respond to comments, especially Jayde. That's more her thing than mine. But Jayde is awesome. She has tons of value that she brings to the table, and she will answer your questions. Make sure you guys ask good and interesting questions to bring value to others, and ask away. Seriously, do leave comments. Let us know if you like this kind of a format, if there's a topic that you want us to cover in future, or if you just like the video. We love getting feedback. If there's anything constructive that you have to tell us, then we're always open. Otherwise, make sure that you leave a like for the algorithm so that other people can find this video. And super, super, super important, make sure you subscribe, because we have a lot more content on the way. We'll be doing videos like this. And if you guys have topics that you want us to cover, then we will cover those topics, as long as you let us know what topics those are going to be. We have a lot of big plans in terms of the company, media, and content that we're going to be producing for you. So make sure you subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing. It helps us out, makes us motivated to bring you guys more new content and help you guys out. And with that, my pros and cons, basically, to say what Jayde said, that's totally accurate. I think that summarizes it really nicely. What I will say is that regardless of which platform you're going to go with, have an honest conversation with yourself before you have a conversation with anyone, like a marketing company. You know, how capable are you really? How comfortable would you be with spending money and knowing that you're going to get a return on investment on that money? Not necessarily because of the marketing company or not, but just that you know what you're doing, that you can actually convert the people that you're talking to, because these are people. So if you're going to use money without a marketing agency, doesn't matter. If you're going to go and do Facebook or YouTube, whichever way you're going to do it, there's ad spend money that you're going to need to spend regardless. And, you know, if you can't honestly see yourself converting those leads, then you should really take a step back and maybe analyze ways that are going to be less resource intensive from a financial perspective. Potentially, maybe there'll be less financial risk for you. If you see this as a risk and not an investment, then it might be a bit premature for you. So pros and cons, you could probably have a little bit less in the way of risk if that's something you're worried about, if you just start off smaller, and you can do smaller off of Facebook. The con with the YouTube is you have to go in heavy off the get-go and then expect to see results later on. And that's not going to be a fit for everybody. So make your choices. I hope this video was helpful. We went into a lot more depth than maybe even I anticipated or Jayde anticipated. So I really hope you guys are able to see value in this. And like I said earlier, we would really appreciate to see you guys leave your comments below if you found this helpful. And if you have anybody that you feel would benefit from this video, make sure you share it, send a link over. That's it from me. Jayde, anything else you want to add?
I got nothing else for y'all.
All right. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care. And if you want to talk to us about anything, feel free to sign up for a conversation, and we'll be happy to talk to you.
And I'll drop that link in the comments too, so that you can schedule a call with potentially Roy or someone else from our team.
Yeah. Comments as in if it's Facebook. Otherwise, we'll see in the description for the video on YouTube. All right, guys.